Exodus chapter 3. Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within the bush. Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it didn't burn up. So Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight, why the bush doesn't burn up. When the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called to him from within the bush, Moses! Moses! And Moses said, Here I am. Don't come any closer, God said. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. Then he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. The Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I've heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. And now the cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I've seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now go, I'm sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. Moses said to God, suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you. And they ask me, what is his name? What should I tell them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, say this to the people of Israel. Yahweh, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my eternal name, my name to remember for all generations. Our focus in this video would be on the Hebrew form of the I am introduction. We will compare it to how it might have been interpreted by the Akan-Twi-speaking people of the west coast of Africa in modern-day Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire, who practically use the same form as the so-called Hebrew texts with some slight variation in understanding. As we are going to deal with language, it is essential to understand that language and culture are interconnected. Fatiha Gwesabi, who's a professor of languages and translation in the Literature and Humanities faculty at l'Université de Béchar in Algeria, says it best in this article entitled Blurring the Line Between Language and Culture and published in the Language magazine. Language always carries meanings and references beyond itself. The meanings of a particular language represent the culture of a particular social group. To interact with a language means to do so with the culture which is its reference point. We couldn't understand the culture without having direct access to its language because of their intimate connection. I think this is brilliantly said, so we will endeavor to keep that in mind. When dealing with an African text, for example, one cannot simply translate and transfer it into a European framework without losing its profound meaning connected to the culture of the originator, including all that it entails in terms of religious practices, spiritual beliefs, meaning of proverbs that reflects the lessons learned from a collective life experience, language nuances, etc. And of course, this also goes the other way around when transposing a European or Asian text into any other culture will strip it of the nuances that can only be understood by being immersed into the culture it originates from. Before we jump into the Hebrew form of the I am introduction of Yah to Moses, it is important to understand that modern Hebrew is actually not the original language spoken in ancient biblical time. The most popular form of modern-day Hebrew is called Yiddish, and its earliest dated documents are from the 12th century of our Common Era, which makes it fairly recent by language standards. Collins' dictionary describes Yiddish as a language which comes mainly from German and is spoken by many Jewish people of European origin. In short, the base of modern-day Hebrew is the German language. It is a language spoken as a vernacular by Jews in Europe and elsewhere by Jewish immigrants, usually written in the Hebrew alphabet. Historically, it is a dialect of High German with an admixture of words of Hebrew, Romance, and Slavonic origin developed in Central and Eastern Europe during the Middle Ages. In contrast, the authentic form of Hebrew of the biblical Old Testament belongs to the Canaanite branch of the Semitic subfamily of the Afro-Asiatic family of languages. In other words, Hebrew is originally an African and Asian language. Now we know Moses definitely didn't speak English, or any European language for that matter. So the angel in the bush wouldn't have said, I am that I am, or I am who I am. This is merely a translation. With that in mind, I will play 2 videos of the actual introduction in the Hebrew language along with its interpretation as commonly assumed. Then, I will provide you with an alternative view of the same keywords from our own language among the Akan people of the west coast of the African continent. I would like to use this opportunity to make a disclaimer for fair use of third parties' material, to bring you carefully selected authors to share their various linguistic and cultural understanding of the subject at hand. With this, let me bring you our first witness of the Hebrew form for I am in Exodus chapter 3.
For thousands of years, every morning and evening, Jewish people have prayed these well-known words as a way of expressing their devotion to God. They're called the Shema. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. And as for you, you shall love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and with all of your strength. We're going to look at the second key word here, Lord, written in all capital letters. This is the personal name of Israel's God. We first learn the meaning of this name in the story of Moses and the burning bush in the book of Exodus chapter 3. God appears to Moses and he commissions him to liberate the Israelites from slavery. And so Moses wonders, what if people ask the name of the God who has sent me? And so God responds, tell them, AHAYAH has sent me to you. Now, that Hebrew word AHAYAH means I will be. In other words, God's name means that he is the one who is and who will be. God's existence doesn't depend on anyone or anything else. This God simply is. But It will sound kind of strange for Moses to go say to the Israelites, I will be has sent me to you. Only God can say, I will be. So in the next sentence, God tells Moses the version he should say aloud, Yahweh, the God of our ancestors, he has sent me to you. Now, that word Yahweh is the ancient Hebrew form of the verb he will be. And this is the personal name of the God of Israel. It appears over 6,500 times in the Old Testament. Now, here's what's interesting. Over the centuries, Israelites wanted to honor the sacred nature of this divine name. So, as they read the Hebrew Bible aloud and they came to this name, they stopped saying Yahweh and instead started saying the Hebrew word for Lord, which is Adonai. Now, this practice has been continued throughout the centuries, and so later, when people started translating the Bible into English, they adopted this same practice. Instead of spelling out the divine name, they translated it as Lord, spelled in all capital letters. Okay, you got that? Good, because there's more. Ancient Jewish scribes wanted to prevent anyone from even accidentally saying this name aloud when you read the Hebrew Bible. And so they came up with a visual device to remind you to make sure you say Adonai. They took the 4 consonant letters of the divine name. These letters correspond to our English letters YHWH. Then they inserted the 3 vowels from the word Adonai and combined these together to create an artificial hybrid word, which if you pronounced it, it would say Yahuwah, but no Israelite ever said Yahuwah. It's simply a visual reminder to say the word Adonai. Now, it gets more interesting. Much later, Christian scribes came along who didn't know that Yahuwah was an artificial word, and so they began to say it aloud and spell it in their writings. This is the word that eventually entered into English as Jehovah. It's a word many people still use today. But the main thing is, the word Lord in all capital letters is an indication of the divine name. Don't confuse it with the word Lord in your English translations that's not in all capital letters. That is the actual Hebrew word Adon, which just means Lord or master. This word can refer to people like kings or the master of a servant, even a shepherd over his sheep. And sometimes biblical authors will use this word to refer to God, like in the phrases, the Lord of all the earth, or the Lord of lords. But behind all of these words, YEHOVAH, Lord, Adonai, stands the original divine name of the God of Israel. It refers to the one who was, who is, and who forever will be.
Okay, so this was our first witness from the Bible Project, and I actually enjoyed how this video was made. I note 2 things from their breakdown. 1. Although AHAYAH, as seen in Strong's H1961, is oftentimes transliterated as AHAYAH, they went with the pronunciation AHAYAH. 2. God gave Yahweh as a name to Moses in Exodus chapter 3, verse 15, and man supposedly would have come up with the artificial name Yahovah, which, as they explain, is a combination of the 4 consonants Yahweh, that is YHWH, and the 3 vowels of Adonai. Right, well, I find this very interesting, but anyway, let's continue along this path with our second witness, before bringing in our continental breakdown.
So to begin, let's look at Exodus chapter 3, verse 13. And Moshe said to the Elohim, Look, I am going to the sons of Israel, and I will say to them, Elohim of your fathers sent me to you. And they will say to me, What is his name? What will I say? So here we can see in this verse that Moshe wants to know the name of the Elohim that he is meeting with, so that he can tell them who he is. Now let's take a look at verse 14. And Elohim said to Moshe, AHAYAH asher AHAYAH. We're going to come back to this, and we'll take a look at this phrase here in a little while, but let's continue on. And he said, Thus you will say to the sons of Israel, AHAYAH sent me to you. The name Elohim gives to Moshe is AHAYAH. Interesting that we always hear Yahweh, Jehovah, Yahweh, YEHOVAH, etc. But you don't very often hear people say that his name is AHAYAH. And yet right here in verse 14 it says that his name is AHAYAH. AHAYAH. Now let's take a look at the root of this word AHAYAH, and that's the hey yod hey, or hayah. We're going to conjugate this verb. First person is AHAYAH. AHAYAH means I exist. Now the verb hayah literally means to exist, but we can also translate it with the verb to be in English. In fact, most of the time it is translated with the verb to be. In this case, I am. And as an example, you can see the word AHAYAH used in Exodus 4 verse 12. The second person would be tihyah. That means you exist, or you are. And an example of this word can be found in Exodus 4 verse 16, if you want to look these up. Then in the third person is Yihyeh. He exists, or he is. An example is also found in Exodus 4 verse 16.
Tell me, baby, are you done talking? Yeah. Are you done talking? Tell me, baby, are you done talking? Yeah. Are you done talking? Tell me, baby, are you done talking? Yeah. Are you done talking? Tell me, baby, are you done talking? Yeah. I don't wanna be a player.
Are you done talking? No disrespect to these authors, I am just poking it a bit of fun. I don't speak modern Hebrew, so their contribution for me was key to identify what the verb hayah, that is to be, when conjugated is rendered as yeah. And with the pronoun we have a yeah. Straight away I thought, whoa, Yah introduced himself to Moses in the Akan tree language, or at the very least in a language form that is understood by millions of Akan and other groups on the African continent. We've heard the European breakdown for centuries, so if they're done talking now, then let's hear the African counterparts. After all, remember, the Collins Dictionary said Hebrew was an Afro-Asiatic language, so let's hear its Afro voice for a change. Let's start with to be, yeah, and the meaning of a yeah.
Hi guys, hi everyone, you are so welcome once again to my channel. If you are new here, Akwaba to this channel. My name is Adjoali, okay, and in today's video we're going to be doing another learn tree in 3 minutes type of video, okay. So as you guys know, this is a place where you can learn tree in a very short, simple, straight to the point type of manner. I don't want to overwhelm you guys with a lot of information, so that is just what this channel is about. And so if you are interested, then Akwaba, join me and let's just go ahead and do this lesson together. Today's topic is the verb to be. So as you guys know, the verb to be is very important, very essential in every single language, as it allows us to talk about ourselves, allows us to give information about ourselves, allows us to tell people where we're from, what we do, how tall we are, if we're happy or if we are sad. So it is a very important verb, okay? It is one of the verbs you have to absolutely know, and in Chi, the verb to be is yeah. Yeah. One thing I have to inform you guys is that you have to be very, very careful when you're pronouncing this word, as it can mean so many other things, okay? So if I say yeah, 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 basically I'm not really opening my mouth. I'm not opening my mouth like wide. It's just a kind of, you pronounce it kind of inwardly. Like it's inwards, okay? You pronounce it inwards. It's not really projected that loud, because when you project it louder, it means to do. So if I say yeah, 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 that means to be. Now if I say yeah, 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 that means to do, okay? It has the same spelling, but it means different things. Now if I also say yeah, it means good. Okay, it means good. So the same spelling or the same word can mean this. It can mean totally different things. You just have to know how to pronounce it. So to conjugate the present tense of the verb to be in Chi would be meye, 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 woye, 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 oye, 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 eye, eye, eye,
Let me play that back one more time.
eye, 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 yeye, 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 moye, 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 omoye, omoye, omoye. Now, I always have to make this kind of like disclaimer, because some people would say ye instead of ye. I speak Kweuchi or Asante Tree, and so mine is ye. If you go to the central region, or if you go to the Equiapem eastern region, you would have people say ye, okay, ye instead of ye. People say ye instead of ye. So as I always say, it depends on where you're from. My tree is kind of like the general type of tree, kind of like the Asante tree, Kweu tree type of tree. So it is a general tree, and so there isn't that much of an accent. If you go to the central region, yes, you would not hear people say meye, okay, meye. People would say miye.
Enyamina mayo, Enyamina mayo, Enyamina waya, Enyamina mayo, Enyamina waya, 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 Enyamina waya. Ile wonja kowe, mi beto fata kowe, memenge mo vitemo. Ame yonsane, ame na kule mi beno kowe, sinu wadromo, mene mi yani mimba. Ose, ose baba, baba oluwa. Ose, 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 ose baba.
The verb to be in the Akan language is exactly the same. A ye would be understood as it is, and one would be waiting for the description to follow. This would suppose that a third person in the bush is telling Moses that the entity who sent him simply is or it is. And from the text we know that it was an angelic representation of God addressing Moses in the bush, not Yah himself. Depending on the intonation, Yeh could mean fine, whereby a Yeh means it is good or all is well. It could also be interpreted as the entity being introduced does or it makes it does. I speak Twi before an accent, so if you're really interested in getting the intonation right, hear it from the Twi language teachers I am bringing to you.
Hey guys, welcome back to Learn Akan. So let's start with the first to be verb form that there is in Chi, and this is by far the most commonly used one, and that is ye. Ye. Now, please pay attention to how I pronounce this. I say ye. Ye. Not ye. Okay, so the tone is on the lower side. Ye. Ye. Not ye. If you bring the tone up, you might be saying something completely different. And this is the case with all the to be verb forms that we are going to be looking at. This very to be verb form, there is an instance where we say it with a much higher tone, but we are going to get into that much later. For now, just know that generally, for all the to be verb forms that we have, we say them pretty much with a lower tone on each of them, all right? Now, for this to be verb form, I call this the descriptive to be verb form. And I call this descriptive because we typically use this to describe stuff, okay? So we use this to describe people or things or entities in general, all right? So, for example, we will use this to describe a person's character, all right? Or a person's profession, okay? Or a person's nationality, a person's tribe, all right, or the general outlook of something, all right. So this to be verb form is what we use to do that.
We have demonstrated that the verb to be is the same in the Akan Tree language as found in the biblical texts. The difference is in the pronoun, which indicates a third person. In this case, the angel in the bush is introducing an entity that is not human. We are told that the Hebrew form for I am that I am is AHAYAH, ASHER, AHAYAH. Some say AHAYAH, ASHA, AHAYAH. The tree sounding equivalent to this, although as uncommon as it is even in the English language, would be AHAYAH, 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 which would be contracted in modern speech as AHAYAH, AHAYAH, basically meaning that the entity is what it is. So from the Akan Tree language, we learn that the subject is one, an entity, and two, being introduced by a third person, and this lines up with the biblical text. Exodus chapter 3 verse 2, and the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. Acts chapter 7 verse 30. After 40 years had passed, an angel appeared to Moses in the flames of a burning bush in the desert near Mount Sinai. After introducing himself as AHAYAH, that is I am or he is, depending on the interlocutor, in the next segment in Exodus chapter 3 verse 15, we are introduced to the name of the Almighty One. God also said to Moses,
"Say this to the people of Israel, Yahweh, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my eternal name, my name to remember for all generations."
Now I would like to introduce you to another powerful prophecy, which ends in an equally powerful introduction of self, from Yah to Isaiah. I would then give you the Ascended Tree translation of the key word in the verse. We will then come back to the burning bush declaration in Exodus chapter 3 to connect the dots from an Akan perspective of the name Yahweh gave to Moses. Isaiah chapter 52, and we're going to start at verse 1. Awake, awake, Zion. Clothe yourself with strength. Put on your garments of splendor. Jerusalem, the holy city, the uncircumcised and defiled will not enter you again. Shake off your dust. Rise up, sit enthroned, Jerusalem. Free yourself from the chains on your neck, daughter Zion, now a captive. For this is what the Lord says, you were sold for nothing, and without money you will be redeemed. For this is what the sovereign Lord says, at first my people went down to Egypt to live. Lately Assyria has oppressed them. And now, what do I have here, declares the Lord? For my people have been taken away for nothing, and those who rule them mock, declares the Lord. And all day long my name is constantly blasphemed. Therefore, my people will know my name. Therefore, in that day they will know that it is I who foretold it. Yes, it is I. It is I. Such a powerful and bold introduction. It is I, and there is none else. It is I, the Almighty One. It is I, your Redeemer. It is I, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. It is I, is talking to a broken people, sold for little to nothing into slavery, and they remain captives, and the adversary mock them. Then we look into the Ascended Tree Bible, the NYAME translation, in Yesaiah, that's Isaiah, chapter 52, verse 6, and we find out that it is I who foretold these things, translates into AHAYAH. And if you wonder what Ascended Tree in NYAME means, it simply means Ascended Tree, word of life. Nkwa means life or existence, and Asem means the word. In John chapter 1 verse 1, where it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, the Ascended Tree translation of the word would be Asem. In the beginning was Asem, and Asem was with God, and Asem was God. Who they've been calling HASHEM is none else but Asem. And the Bible reveals to us that this is Yesu, Jesus the Christ, the living Word of God. Let's not lose focus on AHAYAH. AHAYAH, that is, it is, and me, which means I in the tree language. AHAYAH, me, it is I. Now let's go back to Exodus chapter 3, where after telling Moses in verse 6 that I am the God of your ancestors, it is I, Moses, he repeats it again in verse 15. God also said to Moses, "Say this to the people of Israel, Yahweh, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you." Again, it is I, Moses, me. And he repeats it one more time, a third time in verse 16. "Now go and call together all the elders of Israel. Tell them, Yahweh, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has appeared to me. It is I, Moses, me. We call him Yahweh, which means the self-existing one. It is I, the one who is who he is. Yahweh also means the same. Did the Akan turn Ayeme, it is I, to NYAME? I do not know. The Hebrew form of the divine name, given as a transliteration of the Tetragrammaton, that is to say YHWH, is also hypothetical. Therefore, my objective is to provide you with an alternative view from the Akan people, which to me, in its ability to provide a natural, cohesive, linguistic breakdown of the relevant text in Exodus 3, brings us a step closer to knowing the divine name which was given to Moses. The prominent scholar Dr. J.B. Donkwa, who was one of the founding fathers of Ghana in his fight for independence, seems to have come to the same conclusion in his book The Akan Doctrine of God. The true meaning of NYAME. The question has been seriously put to me in discussions with Mr. K.B. Ateko and Dr. J.W. de Graft Johnson, that if Dr. Williams is right in suggesting that the Hebrew Tetragrammaton is the same, discoverable in several of the African tribal names of God, then what is the explanation for peoples so distantly separated having a similar name for one idea? And further, does the etymology or derivation of the Hebrew Javeh or Yahweh agree with the etymologies in the several African names for gods? In other words, does, for example, the Akan group of consonants NYM stand for a meaning similar to the Hebrew group JHVH? And by that, of course, he means YHWH, which is more commonly known. These are difficult questions. The first is mainly historical, namely, whether the African tribes have had at any time had such connection with the Hebrews in Egypt or elsewhere as to have led the one to borrow an important word from the other. It is well known that Moses had not a name for God when he met the angel of the Lord on Mount Horeb. He had married Zipporah, daughter of Jethro, a Midian priest, and had been staying with the family for some period until, in the process of time, the king of Egypt died. At a loss for a true name for Adonai, who had sent him to go to the Israelites in Egypt, Moses may well have adopted from his father-in-law the name for God that Jethro was in the habit of using as a priest. At any rate, we are told in Exodus 3, verse 14, that God told Moses his name was I am, that is, Yahweh in Hebrew. Now, the Akan word for I am is Ayeme or Meneme, and it is quite impossible for us to say whether, like the Hebrews, the Akan people turned Ayeme into NYAME, or that the Ga people turned Midzime into Nyomo. It is enough to say that in most of the tribes in which NYNM or NZMB appear in the name of God, Ye, or Ze is the indicative of the verb to be, am, and that the personal pronoun nominative is me or me. Where the English would say I am what I am, the Akan would say mini nia mini or meye nia meye. But as aforesaid, these are very difficult and complicated issues, requiring considerable research, for which the present writer is not well equipped without a knowledge of Hebrew, little only of African languages, and much less access to the original books and other sources. Meanwhile, by going back to Aristotle, our sure and certain guide, we may hope to arrive at a certain fundamental meaning of the word NYAME by appealing mostly to the best form of evidence, internal evidence. It is just possible that in all the languages in which the NYM or NYMB or NZNM formula is found for the name of the Supreme Being, the root meaning is I am, as in the Hebrew, Yahweh, but I have not enough evidence to be certain. I stumbled upon this statement from J.B. Donkwa at the very last minutes of having completed this material for you, and I couldn't help but think to myself, if J.B. Donkwa have had access to the evidence we were presented with today, how theologians are saying the original Hebrew form for I am would have been a yeh, a language he would have understood in his own ascendatory native language, how he would have had a greater conviction, how he would have been further emboldened in establishing the preeminence of Hebraic roots among the Akan, and to a larger extent, a great multitude spread across the African continent and our family in the diaspora. The Tetragrammaton spelling out YHWH for Yahweh, Yameh for the vast majority of the Akan of Ghana, Nyamia for the Akan Baoulé tribe of Côte d'Ivoire, Yehveh for the Ewe tribe of Ghana, Togo, Benin, Nigeria, and Yahweh for the Dan Yakoba tribe of Côte d'Ivoire, not even mentioning Niamey, the name of the capital of the West African country Niger. And Yamei, the son of Tola, a man of the tribe of Issachar in the Bible, which the so-called Strong's Hebrew Dictionary reference H3181 would want us to pronounce every possible way, such as Yakmei, as it suddenly is given a K sound. But if you remain vigilant, the truth remains in plain sight. Many possibilities for the correct pronunciation of the name given to Moses in Exodus chapter 3, but what they have, or at least should all have in common, is the first syllable, Yeh, or Yah, Yeh, to signify that he is, and the everlasting nature of the Most High God.
To me, to me, to me, everybody say.
Keep the commandment by showing love to one another in deeds of kindness, as this is how the true name or character of the Creator will be made manifest. Then you would come to the understanding that the name given was intended to bring you to the realization that it is the greater spirit in you that has been running the show. Indeed, look into the mirror and say it 7 times, AHAYAH, it is I, it is I. Indeed, it is I who is the temple of God. Or do you not remember what Yah told Moses? When Moses saw that his people, the Israelites, were petrified at the sight of the Egyptian armies coming to them, he told them in Exodus chapter 14 verse 14, the Lord will fight for you, you need only to be still. Then the Lord said to Moses, why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on. Raise your staff and stretch out your hands over the sea to divide the water so that the Israelites can go through the sea on dry ground. It is I, AHAYAH, that must make that first move in faith. Did Yesu not say it? That it is I, AHAYAH, that must speak to the mountain with no doubt in my heart, and it shall be removed? Let's bring spiritual cleanliness into our lives and align ourselves with the will of our Father. Then we will understand the true meaning of it is I that is in us, for we are of Yah, and He who is in us that speaks these words with confidence, it is I, AHAYAH, is greater than he who is in the world. Peace and blessing to you and your family. May the grace, healing, and divine protection of Yah be with you and your loved ones always.
Somebody worship him wherever you are. We bless you, Lord. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. We bless you. Yeah. Asafo, YEHOVAH. Oh, Dumakumaya, Dakupon, to me, YEHOVAH, to me, Somebody lift up your hands wherever you are.